Look, there's 4 main ways that you could become a millionaire. And the first way is you could marry into it, but usually marrying for money ends up being really crappy. I don't know if any of you remember Anna Nicole Smith, and she married that really old dude, and then she died. That sucked. Another thing that you could do is you could win the lottery, but guess what? That's just a tax on the poor. So I wouldn't really recommend giving your money away so that states can raise funds for stuff they overspend on. The third way is what I would call the lucky sperm club. You could just be born into a family that's already wealthy. Or the fourth is you could actually earn it.
Let's put more money in your pocket, increase your financial IQ, and create more peace of mind, clarity, and certainty in your life. Welcome to Money Matters, a weekly segment of the Wealth Labs podcast where we tackle the money topics that matter.
And the fourth is the most predictable way to get there, and there's a pretty fascinating study on becoming a millionaire done by Shirley Blotnick. Wrote about this in my book, Killing Sacred Cows, a little New York Times bestseller, just in case you hadn't heard of it. But Del, this is something that I know that you're pretty passionate talking about because you went the opposite route to start your life.
I did, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
I'm just going to oust you. Go ahead and tell that story.
About how I started my life?
Yeah,
And well, I lived the prototypical life.
Getting a good job with good benefits so that you could
I could retire when I was at 65 years old, and I wasn't very happy in my life at all. So yeah, that I was following the prototypical, what we're taught to do.
So I could bless your life with all this joy.
It really was, yes. And I eat better food now too because of it. So so anyway, there's a better path to becoming a millionaire.
Right.
And most people don't realize that there's a predictable pattern that you can follow that works every single time.
Yeah.
With, constant results. So what we're going to do is talk a little bit about that.
Well, let me break it down. First thing to do is make more money. The second thing to do is keep a lot more of that money you make through efficiency. The third thing to do is learn to be a better investor so you can grow your money. And the fourth thing to do is invest back into yourself. Now, in the make more money, this first piece, we're going to talk about a study that I think is it's pretty insightful.
It is.
Yeah, so let's go through it.
So Shirley Blotnick conducted a study back in the 1960s. I think it was like a 20-year longitudinal study. And what he did is he interviewed, I think it was 1,500, middle-class Americans.
Yep.
And what he wanted to do...
All of them wanted to be a millionaire.
All of them wanted to be a millionaire, and he wanted to see what percentage of those would do what it would take to become a millionaire.
Yeah.
Well, over the course of that 20-year period, about 300-400 of them fell out of the way. They died, they moved, they lost contact with them, and so... Realistically, there was only about 1,100 left, and at the end of the 20 years, Shirley connected up with those 1,100 individuals and said, tell me about your, where you're at right now. Are you a millionaire? And how did you get there?
What was it, 99 work?
There was 87.
87.
So something like that. It was 87, maybe 90, but about 8 to 9% of the people that had, prepared and wanted to become millionaires actually became a millionaire.
But there was 2 very different paths.
There was 2 very, very different paths. And what was interesting in the study is that it talked about what the expectation was that these people had that would allow them to become wealthy. And it was basically, I just need to make a lot of money, and that money needs to work.
I'll make it at whatever costs.
I'll make it at whatever costs.
Right? I'll just do whatever. I don't care if I enjoy it. Where you kind of started.
Exactly. And then hopefully that money will work for itself, and my interest will compound, my principal will compound.
How many people made it on that path?
No one in that study, which was really interesting. Who would have thought? But the prevalent thought was that the individuals that were going to become millionaires were sacrificed.
Sacrifice, shrug, damn it. That's what we're talking about. You got to shrug, sacrifice. It doesn't even work, so life gets more miserable, and then it turns out that then you get kicked in the nuts in the end anyway. So
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a predictable pattern that they found. They found 5 characteristics that each of these millionaires had in common that each of them used to become a millionaire. And think about it, back in 1980, $1 million meant a lot more than it does today.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot of money, back in the 1980s. So anyway, what they found was these 5 key habits. Number 1, they were persistent. Number 2, they were patient. Number 3, they were willing to do the nobler and pettier aspects of their job. Number 4, they had a non-competitive attitude with their coworkers. And number 5, besides what they did in their occupation, they spent a minimum amount of time on their investment activities. Minimum, like 1 hour a month. And so it was very, very interesting that those were some of the traits. Now let's talk about persistence here. Because in my mind, when I think of persistence, I think of my mom. And I think about being a 3-year-old kid waking up at 4:30 in the morning, practicing the violin. And
you're professional level at the violin.
So I love it. Yeah, I've had opportunities to perform with the Utah
performed in
Symphony a little
Europe,
bit. Yeah, we went to Europe once, which was really fun to perform over there. And
I'm a guitar hack. I play guitar, but
have you performed in Europe on the guitar?
I performed at parties, and I did perform at the state fair once, and we took third in the competition. But then our singer did a solo act, and she took first. So we brought her down. We were an anchor in a bad way. So yes, I am not professional because at the 4:30 I was sleeping.
You weren't doing that, right?
Wasn't practicing.
I didn't have a choice, honestly. I just, my mom said, you came to the door and she'd like jump on me in bed and say, Dale, you got to get out of bed. We got to practice. And so she would get me up and we'd practice for an hour and a half to 2 hours every single day, 5 days a week. And when I became a teenager, it was 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And when I think of persistence, I think about practicing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. And I practiced it not once, not twice, probably 10,000 times when I was a kid.
So you can crush Twinkle
So
Twinkle
I could
on
probably
the violin.
crush it right now.
Yeah.
I wish I had my violin. That would have. Dang it.
Dude, you just airballed.
I did. Next time,
Perfect
I'll bring the
teaching
violin.
opportunity. Dale Feldus.
So, but what helped me get there was my mom had these M&Ms, and she would cut those M&Ms into little pieces because there was 6 of us little kids, and we didn't have a lot of money. Yeah, you heard about the story of peanut butter and Miracle Whip sandwiches. And so she would cut up these M&Ms into 4 little pieces. And every 10 minutes that I practiced, she would give me 1/4 of an M&M.
Damn, dude, I could have paid you
Still
so
not-
much less as my financial architect.
You didn't know.
Damn, no.
Right. But it
I'm gonna
pushed
give
me.
you a full M&M every 10 minutes you work on my finances.
Right, exactly.
You've gotten a little bit more pricey these days.
It's a little bit different
Yeah.
now. Yeah, I have a full M&M now.
Sweet.
Anyway, so that's one of the first traits of a millionaire is they're persistent. They're willing to do what's hard in the moment. They push through,
I
they
call
practice.
it hard easy versus easy hard.
Correct.
Hard sometimes to get up in the morning and meditate. Hard to do the workout. Hard to work on the gratitude journal where I could just be laying in bed, sleeping, or watching Netflix.
Correct.
And life gets easier by doing that. But you make those hard choices first.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they found that common characteristic amongst all these
They
90
really
millionaires.
found was that people did work they enjoyed.
True. Talk about that, Garrett. Tell me what
There's
you're
only one person on there that hit the millionaire status that said he wasn't doing work he really enjoyed.
interesting.
Everyone else said they were doing work that they enjoyed, which
Right.
I think creates a level of engagement where we're more apt to pay attention to it, to develop it, to invest in it, to bring a different level of energy. Now, I don't think passion alone is enough because passion's fuel, and if you're going in the wrong direction, you're just going to go further, faster away from where you want to go. So purpose is absolutely key, but having drivers, having values, and when you're doing things aligned with that, you tend to have a different level of effort, or even more so than effort, a different experience. Like if I try to practice a speech by myself, it always sucks. But when I'm on a stage and there's a big group and there's that energy of the group, or when I know it's it just takes it to a different level.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. So that's important. Having persistence. You got to be patient because achieving that achieving that millionaire status is not going to happen overnight most of the
Getting rich
time.
quick is different than getting rich right.
Correct, right.
A lot of people try to get rich quick and then money keeps evading them. It keeps being lost and they keep starting over.
Right.
That's the lack of patience.
But what we've found is that there's some individuals that do it just the opposite way. They live on credit card debt. They, are constantly, living in the poorhouse. I mean, it's just they don't take the right choices to, achieve the goals that they want to achieve.
Yeah. Okay, so we got patience, we got persistence. Anything else you'd say about this millionaire study?
So I just say that, like you said, the overarching philosophy here is you don't need to be competitive with those that you're, working with.
Yeah, I believe in co-opetition. Wrote about it in
Right.
Killing Sacred Cows. I made a lot of money actually teaching the financial profession, not holding these secrets closely and not sharing them. By sharing them, I ended up doing joint work in my 20s. I ended up getting paid to be an educator with study groups and conference calls back in those days that people paid me every single month for that access, or letting them come and shadow when I was working with them. So I looked at it as improving the profession, not competing inside of the profession. And I think that was a big part of my wealth.
Right.
What else?
So not being competitive, being cooperative.
Yep.
And then realizing that when you focus on what you do best, whether you're passionate about it or not, because honestly, sometimes you're going to be doing the nobler
Tedious
aspects
work.
of
It's
your
the
work,
nobler, yeah.
but sometimes you're going to be doing the crappy stuff.
I get violin at 4:30 sometimes.
It
I'm
was
sure you
not
wanna play
fun
it.
at all.
But when you
Right.
played in Europe, it was probably pretty fun.
Yeah, playing at the St. Stephen's Cathedral in Vienna was one of the coolest experiences of my life. That's where Mozart, basically composed a lot of his music.
There's days I don't feel
It's
like writing,
amazing.
right? But it's like I'm in that practice. Like
So it's the hard easy.
Yeah.
It really is.
So, and sometimes it's editing, and that's maybe the more minutia than the more noble aspect, right?
Exactly. So being willing to do that. I mean, and one of the things that I was really intrigued with, and I was like blown away with you, Garrett. I met Garrett 13 years ago, and I remember a time when Garrett would come to the office before anyone else would be there, and he'd be walking around the entire office and making notice of all the little teeny minutia, the details. Was the bathroom clean? Were the walls taken care of? And I was just blown away. I'm like, this is the CEO, the founder of Wealth Factory, and he's here caring about the little teeny details.
I wanted to have an amazing experience for those people that came through. And I remember one of my buddies, Joe, used to say, he's like, yeah, you could almost tell when a business isn't in a good situation by the level of cleanliness of their office.
Right. Ours was spot free. Yeah.
So the nobler and the
pettier,
minutia.
yeah.
And it's like, I think purpose brings that. When you have really compelling vision or purpose, you're just willing to deal with that. You're willing to be like, this is just part of the process.
Right.
And so you get through it. So look, it's not about, in today's world, were you born of the right family? Sure, that might give a head start. It's not about, did you, marry someone who is already financially wealthy? It's definitely about marrying the right person who can have a huge impact on your wealth. And making sure if you can stay married, that's even better because divorce is super expensive. So we look at like some of these basic components that just allow you to say it doesn't have to be by luck and winning the lottery. It doesn't have to be by the family you were born into. It doesn't matter as much about your circumstance or your race or your ethnicity, because in today's world with the internet, in today's world you've got teenagers, you've got young kids that are making a ton of money. It's really about value creation. Value yourself, be really patient as you let this develop, as you really look at this as the long game of how do you make true impact and live the life that you love.